Hey everybody, it's Devin, also known as Leonard Maltzner.
And I'm here too.
And this is episode 170 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. What are we talking about today, Victoria?
We'll be reviewing the Odyssey episode of the month, Camp in a Hard Place Part 1,
Between
and
cameras.
Malachi's Message Part 3. Finally finishing that up.
Yes. And that's it. Also, album 67, I think, already has, 2 episodes out now.
I've listened to the first episode.
I haven't yet.
I did today.
We should record that review when we do our next episode so we can start getting through listening to those for the billion years from now when those reviews will come out. Let's talk about these episodes. Episode 864, Between Camp and a Hard Place, Part 1, written by Marshall Younger. Qu'est-ce qui se passe, Victoria?
So this episode takes place at Camp Butternut. Wooten and Connie are the counselors. And we meet a couple new kids and a couple kids who we already know come back. So we have Zoe and Olivia and a couple new girls. One is named Elise, and the other one's named Scarlett. We have a couple new boys whose names I can't remember.
Well, we only have one boy, and it's Wyatt, so he's back from the Sandwich Initiative. It's their neighbor.
Oh, that was him, the neighbor kid? Oh.
He looks like he's 3 to 4 years old in the episode art. I
haven't really gotten a good look at
I didn't notice until after the episode in the art how, absolutely dead to the world Wooten is, which makes sense, of course, but I didn't notice enough for it to seem strange to me before listening to the episode.
Oh yeah, he looks like a baby.
Yeah, he looks like a literal
Is that
infant.
Olivia?
Yeah.
And so that's Elise.
Probably.
Oh wait,
or no, Zoe.
Well,
because they're not facing each other,
Scarlet?
Right? They're on the same side, and Scarlett's on Olivia's team, so that wouldn't make sense.
It's probably Elise on the other side.
Although I think in the notes on the art, it might have said that was Scarlett, but regardless, still doesn't make sense. Unless they don't have size, they're just kind of freeform standing around, which would be chaotic, anyway. Not only because water balloons would collide in the air, but also because you have to take a step back between each round and people would run into each other.
I don't know. So, Elise and Zoe are kind of, what are they calling
Paired
themselves?
Up. Their team.
Paired up. So they have teams during the Camp Butternut retreat. Zoe and Olivia are usually teams. There are these two girls who they're rivals with called the Two Marcies. And
with two eyes.
With
it's
but
Tammy
lots of the teams were split apart, and now they're with new people, except for the Two Marcies are the only ones still together. And so Elise and Zoe are together, and Elise is we're told that she's gonna be really shy, but she's actually super outgoing when she actually does show up, and it's because of how her family's been changing since Connie last saw her and stuff, which we'll probably talk about that later. And then you have Scarlett, who's pretty jaded and has a rough life and thought she was gonna be roughing it out in the woods. That's not what's happening, so she's kind of upset about that, doesn't want to be here, wants waffles really bad. Everyone wants Wi-Fi, which I'm going to talk about that later. And then we have Wyatt, who, like you said, is from a past episode. I totally didn't put the pieces together that was him.
I thought you had figured out before I did, because I remembered you really liked his character in the Sandwich Initiative.
I did like his character, but I think I repressed basically all of the Sandwich Initiative. I remember him now, though, and so he keeps Wooten up late every single night asking him questions about, theology and stuff, and the girls are all having like a hard time getting along, and all the kids want Wi-Fi. I went to a camp a lot during the summer when I was a kid, and there was no Wi-Fi there, same as this, for like a similar reason, basically.
Wi-Fi was barely even a thing back then.
Yeah, but still, I remember like everyone trying to find like Wi-Fi spots and stuff. So like the bits about trying to find Wi-Fi while camping and everyone being like, "You're not supposed to have Wi-Fi," was just very nostalgic for me.
At the top of the episode when White's like, I'm not used to reading things written on paper, and I was like, oh, so this is how we're doing it, huh? We're just gonna kind of be a newspaper political cartoon about millennials, despite the fact that these kids are like 12 and below.
I think it could have been a lot worse than it was.
No, I
think it was fine.
Once I thought about it for a second, I was like, I mean, the original Connie Goes to Camp, which wasn't the original Camp Woodnut episode, but still, Connie Goes to Camp, a huge aspect of that story was
Jill.
Allison and her TV dragging that around. Which, then thinking about that is kind of funny, like, technologically, how far we've come along. Like, Allison brings an entire, like, CRT with her to camp. And it's this, like, ridiculous, like, prop comedy kind of idea that she would bring this with her and think that she'd be able to use it here. And then now move to the technology of today, and every single one of these kids has a cell phone with them, which is completely reasonable now. And it's like, it's funny how it's analogous, but the context has changed so much because it was like comedy based on how absurd it was what Allison did back then. And now it's like an expectation of connectivity.
I've heard so much stuff about Connie Goes to Camp today. Like, so
yeah.
I'm going to talk about it in the next episode, I guess. But I re-listened to 2 Oddcast episodes today at work, which I don't do that very rarely, but it was a necessity.
I was shocked when I saw your text.
I actually
I'm glad
enjoyed
you
them,
did.
Although I thought I was a little annoying in the first book review.
I don't remember why, but
it.
I'm glad you did because it sounds like there's a lot I
was a little too
forgot.
overexcited, I think. Sorry, what did you say?
I'm glad that you did that because there was a lot that I forgot that you will now remember.
Yeah, I'm really glad I did it too. I was thinking like if I had time, I would straight up reread the first 2 books, but I don't have that kind of time.
Okay, so like Scarlet is kind of confusing to me as a character, and I guess my notes about her are kind of scattered throughout. But when she first shows up, she was like, oh, I thought this was going to be like Wilderness Survivor, and I was going to like just be foraging in the woods. That's what I wanted. I liked how disappointed she was about, I was like, Scarlet, you can just try and survive in the woods with no tech if that's what you want to do. Like, you can just go into the woods for free.
No, she does want her technology
and do that. But yeah, that's the thing. She's like,
which Connie does point that out.
She's like, I wanted to like forage for my own food and sleep under leaves and whatnot. And then
what was the end of this episode again?
And then at the end, towards the end of the episode, she says to Olivia, she like talks about like her rough home life, and she was like, I'm just looking to like smuggle some waffles out of here just to have some food to eat. And I'm like, why did you want to forage for like truffles then?
I don't know.
And why did you want to make your life so much rougher? My only guess is she wanted to put on that persona so that if she went and did steal a bunch of food, people wouldn't suspect that it was her. That's my best guess. That's all I can think of.
I actually re-listened to this episode this morning. I didn't completely get the chance to finish it between re-listening to the other 2 Oddcast episodes and everything else for today. But I listened to it like 1 2/3 basically times. It makes a lot more sense on the second re-listen, but there is still, I'm still a little confused about why she wanted to rough it so bad.
The weird thing is when she says it at first, it sounds like it's coming from an extremely privileged position, is what I thought. Like, oh, I just want to like just
Muffy and Winthrop, like, oh, we want to chill with the peasants.
Yeah, it's just like, I just want to sleep in the woods, because she doesn't really know what it's like to just be in the woods without nothing and have to look for yourself.
Speak in Latin into the telephone.
We can't go down that rabbit hole, because then we're going to be doing that for an hour, because the whole episode was so good.
I was driving home for the entire last
that sounds dangerous.
Episode, and I was just screaming the entire time.
It's the quail. I said the quail. No, you're saying quail. We're talking about the quail. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. It confuses me, Miss Scarlet.
I don't know. We'll hopefully get more on it.
I imagine.
Next time.
Yeah.
I've heard that phrase so many times today. Speaking of
what phrase?
That will probably be resolved next time in our Blackgaard reviews. So many things we said that about, never brought up in any of the other books.
Well, look, we still have one more book in album 5, and then we just got a lot more content to go still.
I know, but there's so many things you think would have been brought up by this book, and just
a lot of new questions addressed. We'll talk about that next episode, okay? I know you want to talk about it. We got this to get through first.
So many things.
I was glad that with this episode, through the magic of audio drama, we can all enjoy the endless struggle of figuring out which way a fitted sheet goes onto your mattress. I was like, this is relatable content to listen to. I like how, and I mean, I know it's a joke, but I like how Elise clearly has an extremely customized pentagonal mattress and sheets, by extension. Yet when she saw in the flyer that they had twin mattresses at the camp, she thought, yeah, I can dig that with the sheets that I currently possess. Does she have a twin-sized pentagon mattress?
I think there's something in my head that's like any human being or character named Elise, I automatically love them.
Yeah, that's why it's so great that Lindsay's middle name is also Elise.
Wait, it is?
Lindsay Elise Jones.
With an I, I'm assuming.
Yes, I think so.
Because Iris is with an I.
Yes. There was a cowbell joke, like the Saturday Night reference joke.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. But
yeah.
I don't know, I get why he did it.
I didn't think Wyatt would ever return, and then he did. And according to the WebQuest information, he will be appearing more ongoing.
Cool, I like him. I actually really like Wooten and Wyatt in this episode.
I'll get there.
I really like how Wooten handled things.
Okay,
I would have done the exact same thing in Wooten's shoes.
Yes, Wooten. I really deeply respect Wooten's commitment to staying up to absurd hours talking to Wyatt, not out of naivete that he believes that Wyatt's that down for some late night theology, but because he knows that there's something deeper going on, and he's willing to put in the time and sacrifice until Wyatt is ready to bring that out on his own terms without Wooten having to try and pry it out of him.
Yeah, I really respect that. I love Wooten. He's a good guy.
Yeah. Also, and I don't know, this could be accurate. These kids were a lot younger than I am. I like the idea that these kids aren't aware of the existence of Ethernet, because they're like, the offices must have Wi-Fi. There's no other way to connect to the internet. They must have connectivity, therefore we can get it on our phones.
I mean, that was how I thought.
Exactly, I was like, honestly, kids that age nowadays would probably grow up only using wireless connections, basically ever. As far as they know, at least.
Because I have a one-track mind right now. Second Blackgaard book, there's this one great part that we were laughing really hard about, where Richard in Campbell College was hacking into applesauce, and he's like, all you need is a computer with Wi-Fi. And then he types in Mabel/applesauce/start or something like that, and it activates applesauce.
I mean, I think that was his DOS command, but yes, I was assuming he'd already connected to Whitson's computer.
When he was talking to Glossman, he's like, you need me to do it. And then internally, he's like, he doesn't know you need to connect the computer to Wi-Fi to do it. I'm so smart. Richard's an idiot. He's an idiot. I love it.
Oh, yeah, the technological age of that arc, it's just,
he's an idiot.
It really shows. with the retrospect of these books and listening to it too. Granted, anyway. So yeah, as we stand at the end of part 1, we have the AC unit just got broken off the side of the cabin with Scarlett and Wyatt, because Scarlett, despite the fact that she's apparently a huge fan of this show, I was like, why would a true fan of a TV show rather watch a best of compilation first instead of wanting to see the whole episode in context and waiting for that?
Wyatt has a problem. He's like, show me someone falling over. And then she's like, okay.
Do you find it...
And she does, and he's just like, oh, that's the good stuff, and he falls over.
Do you find it weird when, like, older writers talk about, like, what young people do on the internet as just watching cat videos? Like,
it's because
the idea that
no one knows what young people actually do
I love the idea that, like, cat videos, that's what the young people are into on the internet, and that's about the long and short of it.
I feel like...
And fails cringe compilations on YouTube.
Like, early 2000s, that's what...
Oh, it was,
I think that's because, like...
In 2005,
no, it was a thing in early 2000s, but I think that's, like, when adults stopped understanding children and the internet, and that's the only frame of reference they have. Yeah. Like, they would probably be catching up on, like, PewDiePie's Let's Plays or something like that if they had Wi-Fi. Or checking out, like, what the new Jax Films videos are, or, like, the new Game Theory, or, like, Fortnite stuff. I don't know anything about Fortnite. I don't want to know anything about Fortnite. Devin didn't even know what Fortnite was when it first became a thing. He thought people were talking about the term of day compared to...
You're saying me?
I'm a Bim Bam. No, I'm a Bim Bam.
You said Devin.
Yeah, I'm a Bim Bam. Griffin was saying something about Fortnite, and then he was saying, like, oh, you know what that is? And then you said, like, I thought he was talking about, like, the amount of time. I was like, it's a video game.
Victoria, I knew what Fortnite was before the Battle Royale mode existed.
You didn't know what it was the first time you heard about it.
No, I did. I've known about it since before it was released.
Well, you didn't that day. Anyway. But I'm right, though. Aren't I?
Yes.
Because if I had Wi-Fi, that's, like, I mean, not those specific things.
I mean, they'd probably also just
on, like,
be mostly, like,
and stuff.
Checking Instagram, probably.
So, yeah.
Checking all their underage Twitter accounts is probably what they're doing. Their Finstas.
Like, kind of low-key frustrated me a little bit, but no more so than, like, any adult depicting what teenagers are typically doing on the internet.
Statistically, probably watching Twitch streams. I'm going to say that's the number one most likely thing. It's probably watching Lannon on Twitch.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. So that's where they stand at the end. At the end, we don't really get any more with Wooten and Wyatt's situation. Wooten is still committed to, like, staying up and building a relationship with Wyatt until he can figure out why Wyatt feels the need to, you know, ask all these questions that he doesn't really know the answer to, or care about the answer to, just to have Wooten stay up and talk to him. I imagine, like, I mean, given what we know about Wyatt and his, like, insecurities about being alone in the Sandwich Initiative, I wanted to spend all this time hanging out with the Parkers so he didn't have to be, like, at home alone.
No, I do think a part of him actually does want to talk to Wooten.
Well, no, I mean, yes, he
wants to using it as a ploy.
Well, no, I mean, obviously, that's the whole point, is he wants to talk to Wooten. I mean, he's not asking for the sake of finding out the answers to these questions. He's doing it just to have someone to talk to and not feel alone.
Yeah, but I think it's going to come up again in part 2. Like, there's going to be something he needs to know. It'll be from, like, what Wooten taught him. Either that, or
and then Wooten will be
he'll actually get more serious about the questions he asks Wooten.
Yes, definitely.
At night. And I'm looking forward to that scene.
And we had a predictably, like, oof moment where Zoe decides that she is reasonably sure enough that Elise is trying to be bad on purpose at things because she's being sabotaged by the Marcies, that she tells Elise that she thinks that she is so bad at things that clearly it could only be because she's doing it on purpose to sabotage her. Which is...
Yeah, it's rough.
Here's a social tip for you kids. Don't say that to someone. Don't tell them that they're so bad at a thing that they could only be doing it on purpose to hurt you.
Yeah. It wasn't good.
And Olivia's just kind of
Zoe's
chilling,
like a very blunt character.
Yeah. I guess Olivia's just chilling, mostly.
Yeah.
She's just kind
probably trying to think of like a comeback.
She's trying to like
Scarlet said to her.
Bring Scarlet up to caring about what's going on. Conversely to Zoe. The documentary video is focused on archery camp. Bob is learning how to shoot arrows, and then we also see the recording of the Olivia getting decimated by the water balloon scene. That's it.
I like this stuff with Elise and her family. There's not much to say about it, but I liked that.
I thought at first what was happening with Elise was she was going to be super, like, outgoing and yeah, I'm going to do everything. And then you find out that she is still super shy and she just felt the need to, like, pretend to be someone else so that, like, people would like her and she'd have more friends. And then she realized, like, hey, if I'm not super outgoing and I just kind of want to keep to myself and make only, meet only one or two people and make closer friendships, that's cool too.
I also really like what they did with her. Like, you can tell that Connie really only kind of knows her through Camp Wet'n'Nut. So, like, seeing someone only once a summer, they can change a lot in the in-between time. So I like seeing that.
So, that's it for part 1.
Any predictions? Part 2? I already said some of them.
The art for part 2 is, I guess it's really like a callback to the art for album 2, where it's like, I think Wyatt and Scarlet probably are up a tree and there's like a raccoon at the bottom. So I predict that'll happen, I guess.
Do you think Wyatt's gonna testify to Scarlet? He's gonna like
what based on the creation story that Wooten told?
No, I was like, do you think he's gonna say any of the stuff that Wooten taught him to her when they're alone together?
That's an interesting question. Perhaps that would. I do like that idea. Not like a whole Romans Road kind of thing, but something to show that he is actually like retained the meat of what he's talked to Wooten about, and not just like the general company being kept.
I want to think he's retaining it.
Yeah, but that would be a cool way to show it. So yeah, good idea. I mean, I think all the girls will be better friends, and then maybe they'll find out like that the Marcies aren't evil too, and they'll be friends too, just like the
Legally Blonde,
the Jameson sisters. Is that who they were? Like the girls in Tamika's class.
I can't remember what their last name was.
Because it was the same as like the singing group, because Ed makes the joke.
Oh, could be them. I can't remember.
Anyways, yeah, that's all I got. Yeah, that's it for Camp in a Hard Place. Back to Camp Wet'n'Nut. It's very much the same kind of camp formula, story, structure as like the original Camp Wet'n'Nut or Connie Goes to Camp, where like, we're going here and we got a bunch of different kids and we're just going to kind of follow them going through different camp activities as they all kind of weave their arcs together across different like cooperative, courses and stuff. Yeah.
I think it's a lot more like Connie Goes to Camp than Camp Wet'n'Nut.
Yes, it is.
Because it kind of has like the guy's storyline and the girl's storyline.
And like I said, it has like the kind of technology addiction kind of angle. And I mean, building off of what we said before, I recognize that there are people who have like an issue with cutting themselves off from technology. I realize that's a problem. But the line at the beginning where Wyatt's like, oh, yeah, I'm not used to reading things written on paper is like, really? So, that's the end of part 1 of Camp. Between Camp and A Hard Place.
I don't think the tech stuff is bad enough that it deters me from listening to the episode.
No, it was just like when that was one of the first lines of the episode, I was like, on thin ice.
Anyway, Malachi's message.
Yes, let's stop here and finally wrap up talking about Malachi's message, part 3. And we're back now to talk about episode 408, Malachi's message, part 3, written by Paul McCusker. What happens in this final concluding part, Victoria?
So Malachi finally meets everyone, talks to everyone, and all the different plot lines are, like, all, I don't know, wrapped up. Jason finally meets Malachi. They get in a fight. Jason loses very badly.
Yes.
He talks to Jack and Joanne. They figure out their missions thing. Jason's going to be the one going on missions. Jack and Joanne are going to stay in Odyssey. Whit gets inspired by Malachi.
I mean, he talks to Jack and Joanne in the last episode.
He talks to Jack and Joanne after he gets thrown back.
No, Jason does, yes. I thought you meant Malachi, sorry.
No. So Whit and Malachi talk to each other before the episode ends. Eugene talks to Malachi again. Eugene also has his interview at the college, which doesn't go that well, but then when Eugene asserts himself, but then he speaks from the heart, and the guy's like, yeah, okay, we'll think about it. And Connie talks to Malachi, is told to go see Tom. Margaret has recommendations for how Tom could change the Timothy Center, which he talks to Whit about. And Connie is going to start working at the Timothy Center because she wanted to be a teacher and stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. And then they all lose their memories and they eat food made by Joanne. And Malachi watches them in the background ominously. And then Eugene has the thing I love with the answering machine where it gets played back and he gets the job. And it says, like, thank your friend Malachi for coming to see me. And Eugene's like, what? And he replays it and he was like, and thank you for coming to see me. And it's good. It's good. It's just for us. Because, like, I feel like that wouldn't actually happen. I don't know.
Well, that's part of the whole point, right? Is that it's like, maybe I heard something. It's very much reminiscent of, like, the first Matrix and the idea of, like, deja vu, and it's like...
I don't think that's how deja vu worked in the Matrix. I think it was just a complete repeat of everything.
Well, deja vu was a glitch in the Matrix. It was like something changed, and so there was like a repetition.
Okay,
of, like,
I've only
data.
seen the Matrix once,
so
I'll take your word
I have
for it.
as well. It was a long time ago.
Okay.
You've seen it twice. A similar thing, because Malachi literally says, like, I'm your deja vu and your coincidences, the thing you see in the corner of your eye, and then you turn.
I love that line so much.
There's a lot of good lines.
It's just a cool line.
Okay, so at the opening...
The scene with Jason and Malachi is so funny every time.
At the beginning...
Like, listen here, you. And then he's like, you better let go of me. And then the music cuts, and the second the music cuts, like, I always just imagine a big splash noise.
I'm glad that we have this little back and forth that explains why Katrina is still in Chicago, because obviously the reason she originally left Odyssey has been long resolved, which was, like, she can't deal with her Eugene feelings. And so I'm glad that... I
can't deal with Eugene. I need to get away.
I need to go to another state. This is one of the main episodes in the ongoing saga of Connie feeling underdeveloped as a person against everyone else's plot excitement. It's definitely not the first, because that began in Love is in the Air. I don't think there's anything before that. It's been
No, that was the first one, I think.
It made me appreciate, like, it's been a very, very long time now that she's been going through this, given that...
You just realized that.
It's still going on now. Well, I never thought about, like, just the sheer numbers, the proportion of the show that she's been kind of going through this. Like,
I have. That's why I talk about it all the time.
Combined with her insecurities over her friendship with Penny, but I think that's abated for the time, mostly because Jillian and Jules have both come into her house, and she's kind of like reached a more stable position in that regard. But for Connie, all this development was so perfectly timed since she just graduated last album. So she's at like the peak point of possibilities open before her, on top of like what to do with Malachi's missives to send her in one of those directions.
Plus, this episode leads into You Win Some, You Lose Some. That episode's very, very good.
So we have the Jason scene at the lake. And
so good.
When he talks to Malachi, he talks about Malachi meeting him. He's like, at a place like Trickle Lake, secluded, anything could happen. It sounds very romantic, I must say.
It kind of does, yeah.
The voice that he uses is very seductive. If it were to turn that route, it would be about as on par of a meet cute as like Taco and Kravitz had. So there's that, that worked out for them.
You're saying Jason summons Wit and eats his arm?
Yes. So Jason's voice gets all like deep and serious to threaten Malachi, and it's pretty hot. So jot that down. Also, I've always loved Jason getting presumably teleported into the center of the lake, because that's definitely one of the much lesser used party tricks that God likes to pull out in the old miracle hat in the Bible. In fact, this is almost, I've never really thought about it specifically, but it's almost like a reverse parallel of that specific miracle in Acts, where Philip got teleported out of a lake to like 70 miles away from there. But Jason goes into the lake.
Malachi's like, hey, Jason, you ever read Acts so-and-so? And Jason's like, what? And then he gets teleported.
Yeah. Okay. So the Margaret thing.
Okay, me first. One, I want to say it's, if you were hypothetically going to open up, this is very, very different, a hot dog stand, and then people were just like, why can't you have pizza at your hot dog stand? This is unfair. And you're like, well, it's a hot dog stand. It's not intended to have pizza. Like, that's not what its intention was. It's not supposed to be like that. People shouldn't get at you. Like, I know this is a very, very different thing.
Very different, yeah.
But you know what I mean, right? Like, Tom is specifically wanting to open up a Christian retreat. It's unreasonable for Margaret to be like, I want it to be a retreat for every single religion.
Okay, but here's the thing. That's not what she's doing. She is not making him make it not a Christian retreat center, first off.
Well,
I will give you this point. If Margaret was like, I think you should have pizza, and Tom says, no, I'm not going to do pizza, she shouldn't say, then you can't have a hot dog stand.
And that's what she's doing, though.
Yes, no, I disagree with that part.
Which, like, that's...
And we said that last time.
Like, her recommending that, like, fine, that's totally allowed. People can say whatever kind of words they want. That's how speaking works. But, like, she can't not let him have the thing because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, she does have a valid point with wanting, like, a woman in a place of authority, which... Like, honestly, if you're going to have, like, a retreat center with, like, a ton of different kids and every single person that works there is a guy, like, there's going to be tons of young girls going in there, and they're not going to feel as comfortable with all those adult men. So, like, that point is 100% valid. You shouldn't just have, like, adult men in charge. That's not a good idea. So, like, that's a great idea to have Connie come in. I totally support that. But, so that's, like, my main gripe with what Margaret does. But then Tom also does something bad, too, in getting all the people to come in, which, like, he's not the one with power in that situation. I don't know if I'd call it blackmail, like Margaret does.
Yeah, it's not blackmail.
Like, that's not what blackmail is.
But he, like, stages a demonstration over it, like...
Yeah, he's definitely hoarding this over her, or lording this over her, whatever. That's not what blackmail is, though. That's the only... It's like, that's not how blackmail works. But the point is, Margaret was in the wrong. which prompted Tom to be in the wrong, and both of them should have just chilled out and let the Timothy Center happen, is what I wanted to say about this.
Yeah,
and
that's
also, Margaret definitely has enough power to be like, hey, all of you guys, get the heck out of my office. Tom, you can't do this kind of thing. You're not allowed to do the Timothy Center. She was totally within her rights to say that to him for bringing all those people in there. But, like, she didn't want to tarnish her image or something like that. So
I would also like to point out, because it is really glossed over, and it could be that she was kind of like only following it because it's what she wanted to do anyways, and she could have worked around it just because when she decided that she wanted to. But when she does like acquiesce to the crowd, she implies that there was
the loophole thing.
Yeah, that like
that was a lie.
It sounds like it was probably a lie, but I'm saying if it was the truth, then it sounds like there was also additional, like, Leo. Although that wouldn't make sense. It's a private business. Why would that not be a thing?
I've never thought she was telling the truth when she said that.
No, I thought I should bring it up at least, but I don't think that that's a thing that if she wanted to do that would have stood any
I feel like
harm to that.
Tom and Whit would have noticed the loophole.
Anyways, so in contrast to part 2 of the episode where Margaret's name is spoken dripping with distaste, I think overall very reasonable in this episode, certainly in the front part of it. Obviously, she sticks to all of her points without compromise to a point which is detrimental, which results in a very dramatic demonstration in her office. But otherwise, I agree with all of her asks. Tom had literally no women at all in his proposals for his staff, his supporters, his donors, whatever else was in the proposal.
Wait, I thought it was just the people working at the center.
It sounds like it also involved like the people.
He brought a woman teacher in, and she was talking about her students, and she was one of the supporters.
I don't know. It certainly sounded like when he was first talking about his proposal and stuff, like it involved more than just like the people working there directly. Like, in terms of, like, a board and people of oversight and stuff like that. I think it was more than just, like, the people working directly there. And there was no women involved in that. And I'm like, that would be a big red flag for me. I absolutely would have demanded more from him. In terms of the religious diversity angle, I don't agree with her stalwart refusal to approve him, but I definitely agree with her initial assessment. Like, here's the thing. Margaret didn't ask Tom to hold services for other faiths, to put up golden calves everywhere. She just wanted to make it more accessible for others. She wanted to slightly modify wording and naming for literally one thing to make it more accessible to others. She didn't want him to name it after another faith, even. She didn't want him to call it like the Malachi Synagogue or the Malachi Mosque. It was a faith-neutral name. He didn't even have to make it not Christian. He didn't have to change any of the Christian stuff he wanted to teach or preach about and stuff. She just wanted to make it so that more people would feel comfortable going there and getting help and being there, which you would think is the thing that Tom also wants. Like, I don't know, you want to make it more place as much as possible where people can feel like they can come and relax and connect with nature and get counseling and enjoy sports and farming and whatnot. I think it was a very reasonable request. Everyone's still going to know that it's a Christian center, and they're going to know what they're getting when they come there. It's still, that stuff is all very clear.
Like, you have to hold services for all the different religions.
No, that was never a thing.
Oh, okay. I totally misinterpreted that then.
It's like, it's funny to me also because it's like, we want to change this name. We're not changing it to another faith. We're just kind of making it just this neutral name. And they're like, that's outrageous. We're not going to open the center then. And I'm like,
it's just called the Malachi Retreats. It's called the Timothy Center. It doesn't even have the word Christian in the title. How is that not neutral?
One of the names that she suggested for the Malachi Prayer Chapel was the Malachi Reflection Center. It's like, that's not
I don't like that name.
That's like not a name of another faith. That's just like a very neutral kind of thing.
I know.
Reflection is
I like the Timothy Center more than the Malachi Reflection Center.
That's a building, Victoria. The Timothy Center was always the Timothy Center. It was about changing the name of the Malachi Prayer Chapel.
Okay.
So it's like changing the name of one building in the whole thing. And there's also the point that I think it's funny that they're so caught up on like, we're willing to jeopardize the center over changing the name of one building, even though it doesn't change the content or anything that we teach, when like we had an entire episode about how changing the name of something without changing the context doesn't matter. So, like, I mean, yes, obviously, like I said, Margaret was wrong in blockading Tom over such a minor point, but I also think that Tom was extremely stubborn in not making a change that was a good decision for the goals that he himself set out.
Tom is Riley stubborn? That's totally out of character.
Like, it's... And they present it so melodramatically, too. Like, they make it seem like Tom's faith is under attack, war on Christmas, and it would be a betrayal of his faith. He'd be renouncing Jesus Christ.
Speaking
his Lord
of
and Savior,
the
if he were to change the name,
and I'm like, of Margaret's office, can I just say I have never liked the acoustics on the scene when everyone's having the meeting.
Oh, it's bad.
And you can
the
hear all
bad.
the different people.
Yeah.
It sounds like Margaret's like office has become a gym and people are shouting across the entire, like when Connie's just like, me, Mayor Faye. Like, it sounds like Katie was all the way across the studio and she was just yelling her lines.
Also, the fact that you get, like, the individual lines that you can pick out from the extras are just, like, it's not good ad-libbing, or I don't know if it was scripted or ad-libbed. But, like, when she's like, yes, you can open the Timothy Center, and there's the guy, he's like, oh, this is good progress. Yeah, I like where this is going. And it was like, it just got approved.
Have they made a choice yet? Have they said anything?
What do you mean, this is progress? She just said it was approved. Okay.
This is progress. Let's see where we can move on from here. Let's get it unapproved. That'll be better progress.
Okay. Ran over. Eugene's interview.
Precious boy.
It wouldn't have been nearly as bad if he hadn't waffled back and forth every 4 words. I wonder if his pretentious posturing is worse
He's,
than...
like, putting on an accent, too. Like, he's trying to make it sound like he's from Jersey.
I wonder if his posturing is worse than what Armitage would have done in this situation, because it probably wasn't.
I want to imagine, like, different characters seeing him, like, in a one-way mirror or something like that, just watching this interview, like Connie seeing this and just, like, losing her mind, doing what Eugene does and making it her ringtone, him being like, yeah, now sees her ringtone or something like that.
I feel like, okay,
unacceptable, I say, unacceptable.
I don't know if I'm making this up or not. Does Armitage have a habit of, like, throwing in business colloquialisms into his speech? Like, I know it's a thing he does a couple times, but is it enough that it's a pattern, or is that just in my imagination? When he's talking about, like, Fisher cut bait, let's call a spade, and stuff like that.
I think he does that more in Choices.
Does he do it, like, more than an average person, though?
I'd say a little bit more than an average person, but not, like, that bad.
Okay, because Eugene also kind of throws in, like, a weird business colloquialism, and I couldn't figure out if he was, like, trying to mimic Armitage or not.
Think about this. If he is trying to mimic Armitage, it'd be, like, a very exaggerated version.
Yeah, that's true, so it would be even more than that. Good point. Eugene's heartfelt plea that he makes at the end about, like, his love for the college is very sweet.
Every time I listen to that, I'm like, honey, that's really sweet, but that's not how job interviews work. Like, that doesn't mean anything. I'm so sorry.
The most accurate thing Eugene says in that interview is when Dean Rogers says it isn't in the budget, and Eugene's like, I know how these things work. There's always money somewhere. You can rearrange the books and make it work if you really wanted to, which is the most true thing in that entire interview that he says.
Every time I listen to that, I'm just thinking, like, I wish life worked this way. Like, I made a heartfelt plea, and they're like, yeah, we'll give you the job. And I'm like, yes.
I mean, Eugene still didn't get the job until, like, literal divine intervention, and also Armitage pulled strings for him.
I think we're going to say literal divine intervention and also Malachi.
Yeah. So, I think my favorite thing about Malachi's messages that he delivers is really good, and it kind of builds on what we were saying recently, is that he doesn't... Well, I guess that's more of what kind of... I'll say that later, but in general, the thing I really like about his message is that he doesn't just tell people to do a thing, for the most part. He kind of tells Connie what to do, but it's more about him...
Get out. And she's like, okay.
Yeah, which is kind of the humor of that specific one, is he's just like, go to Tom. That's it. But in general, his messages aren't about just like, tell a person, go do this thing. It's about telling them how they're feeling and what they want to do and why they want to do what God already has in store for them. Like when he's talking about to Jason, he's talking about Jason's like search for purpose and how he's looking for a place to belong, or talking to Joanne about the conflict between her head and her heart, or Connie's need for direction. Like he's not just like, go do this thing. He like tells you like what you're feeling and what you want to be doing and why that's the right choice that God has already made for you, and how God is affirming like the things that you want in your heart already.
Like he's telling them what they already know,
yeah,
but they don't want to put into words,
yeah,
or they haven't figured out how to put into words.
Yeah, which is good. It's good, and it's also good in the way that like it's one of the main things that helps people.
Except for Tom, where he's just like, dig.
Yeah.
He's like, what's that mean?
But on the subject of Tom, like the fact that Malachi says his messages in that way is the other thing that helps people believe he is who he says he is. Because it's easy to be like, hey, Joanne, stop doing missions. But he says like, hey, this is how you're feeling. And he knows what's in their heart already. And he's not just like telling them a thing to do. He's not only showing them why they should do the thing, but he's also showing that he has knowledge of like their thoughts and feelings about these topics, which helps like prove who he is and stuff. I really like Joanne's conflict in this episode, like feeling torn between the earthly need to shoulder the responsibility of that with which you're involved, and feeling like you hold the burden for everyone else to get things done, and the heavenly need to just allow God to place people into the roles he has for them and take things in his own way and time is very relatable, I think. And we have this need when there's stuff going on, like, no, I can't let go of this. This is my baby, and there's no one else to do it who can do it like I can do it, and there's no one else to fill this role, so I just need to keep on like working myself sick to hold on to this, because that's the only choice. So it's good. Now, I know that Novacom wasn't really planned at this point, especially because they talk about the whole like, oh, Aubrey's middle name Andromeda in the next album after this. That was just a coincidence. There's no coincidences. I know. I hear the comments say. I know Novacom wasn't planned at this point, so we're not supposed Novacom, so we're not supposed to read into stuff really here in that way, but I will anyways, because obviously. One of the things I think about is how Malachi tells Eugene that regarding all the struggles he's gone through with Katrina, it will get worse before it gets better. And then after this episode, Eugene only shows up in filler episodes until Novacom starts. So I've always imagined that
and then he's just gone.
Yeah. I've always imagined that this line is about the RWS and Armitage's murder and the deathbed wedding and running around the world for their lives. It fits really well, planned or not.
I mean, I always thought of it as being about Eugene and Katrina's relationship, which also is about Novacom. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't have Eugene and Katrina's relationship coming to a climax right before their wedding, like, without Novacom.
Yeah. But specifically in the context of the Novacom-related plot events of Armitage and stuff.
Yeah.
So the thing I was saying before of that I really like about Malachi and his messages. So Connie asks Malachi if he has a message for her, and he asks her what kind of message she wants to hear. This comes back really well to what I was talking about during the Wit Books review, with God asking what we want from him and giving in relation to that. So sometimes we need to think about what we are asking for. It's like the lame man at Solomon's bath that I talked about before, or anyone who encountered the healing cloth in the Wit Books. Connie has to confront the question, consciously or not, of what it is she wants from God, and that perspective for us leaves us with the question of what else she might have gotten if she'd asked for something else. Because he said, like, what message do you want? And she could have asked about all sorts of things, and so she chose what seemed most obvious to her at the point. But we can also think of all the other things she could have asked about. Just like the man at Solomon's bath, when he is like, Jesus, help me. And she's like, what do you want? And he was like, obviously, fix my legs. And then we look at that and we're like, if Jesus said, what do you want? And it seems like, well, obviously, this is the thing that I need. But he could have asked for anything. He could have asked, like, forgive my sins. Grant me the wisdom of Solomon, or any sorts of other things. And so I think that's something important is to keep in mind, like, what are the things that we're asking God for? Are we asking too small? Are we looking in the wrong places when we're trying to figure out what God is trying to do in our lives? So that's good. Good message there.
Quick non sequitur. I'm sorry. This is just, please remind me in the Blackgaard review to address what was said about Professor M in the second book.
I don't worry.
Because it details his death in the second book. So I figured you would want to hear the details of that.
I would like to do that.
Yes.
Okay, so we come towards the end of the episode. I don't know if you have anything to say about stuff prior to the Timothy Center conclusion.
Although
I will say on that topic,
not that I haven't said yet.
The pacing is kind of surprising to me of these episodes once we broke it down into the individual parts. Like, in my mind, the Timothy Center thing is kind of like one of the biggest conflicts in this story, and yet he doesn't kind of run into it until the very end of part 2 / the beginning of part 3 already.
Honestly, the Timothy Center is basically the only big thing that happens in this. Everyone else is just like small conversations with Malachi, and then just meeting together at the end. The only other like thing that's going on is Eugene's interview, and that's only like one scene basically.
Yeah, but it's like Tom is basically like the last art. I mean, obviously he has all the stuff with Timmy's journal at the beginning in part 1, but it's like the Timothy Center stuff kicks off, is basically the last one to do so, and also the first one to wrap up. So I thought that was interesting from a pacing perspective. I always felt it like it was a lot longer, drawn out kind of conflict.
One thing I want to say before I forget is, next to Jason and his confrontation with Malachi, my other favorite confrontation with Malachi is aggressive one, I'll say, not counting Eugene and Connie and Joanne's Jack and Joanne and Connie's dreamy looks at Malachi. Is Eugene versus Malachi. It's our message bearer, Malachi. I was like, Eugene, now is not the time. It's so
Gene, I'm trying to hit on him.
And Eugene's like, oh, I'm gonna do a hit on him, and he like races up, and Connie has to like hold him back.
Down, Armitage.
I like how in this everyone either wants to hit on Malachi or
hit Malachi.
There's two genders. You either want to beat up Malachi or you want to make out with Malachi.
That's a really good assessment, Victoria.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, the interesting thing to me is that breaking the parts up, I realized the pacing is very much not what I would expect from the episode, but it works a lot better than it would have if it was paced the way I would expect.
I think the pacing's, like, good overall. It's just, I'd say the pacing is, if you want to listen to this as, like, more standalone-y, which I don't know why you would want to, like, each individual part standalone, I think the pacing's probably best in part 2, and then part 1, and then part 3.
Well, I think it's paced very well. It's paced a lot better the way it is than it would be if it was broken up into more traditional 3-part first act, second act, third act kind of distribution. Then there were parts you'd have to stretch.
Like the best it could have been.
Yeah. If you had broken it up between the 3 parts so that they were more each individual episodes, then you would have to compress the opening so much and stretch out the end of it to the point that it would be paced very poorly. As a whole, it's very good.
It is good.
So, everyone comes together at the end of the episode to recap their conclusions about Malachi's messages.
Gets some inspiration.
We'll get there. To recap their conclusions from Malachi's messages at the groundbreaking to the Timothy Center, which is the perfect thematic conclusion to the story. I forgot that everyone just forgets Malachi after the adventure, although I do
too.
The thing I always do remember and think about is the altered answering machine message, so I do remember that part always. The interesting thing about that answering machine, to build on to what we were talking about Novacom before, is that originally Dean Rogers commented on the words put forth by Malachi, and then he changes it to Eugene. But I always think about how Armitage had to do with Eugene's position at the college and how that could have factored into Malachi's influence. it seems from Novacom, it sounds like when Armitage says he got him the job at the college, that he wasn't just talking about getting him on the radio wave study, but he was talking about the job in general at the college, which would make sense because right now, Katrina's kind of state of being at this point is she is in Chicago, where her father is, and she is so fretted about Eugene trying to get the position and not being assertive enough. It makes sense that right now she would go seek out her father so that he could pull some strings in Eugene's favor and get him the job. So I feel like...
I always assumed that, when he said, thank you, Eugene, for your words, it was always a cover-up for Armitage coming.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying.
He was just saying, yeah, it was totally the things you said, but it's actually you did get me thinking for 0.2 seconds, but it was actually your future father-in-law.
Yeah. I know, Malachi could have influenced that happening, especially since he told Eugene earlier about how things would get harder before they got better, which was talking about Novacom. So I do think that despite the wording of the answering machine message, when it switched, it was more about switching from talking about Malachi to Armitage than Malachi to Eugene.
I do think Malachi is the reason Armitage did what he did, but yeah, he's definitely talking about Armitage and not Eugene.
And like I said, it makes sense already because Katrina was like, oh, Eugene's not going to get the job. I'm here in Chicago. There's nothing I can do about it. Oh, wait, I live in the same house as my father who has strings at Campbell College that he can pull.
And even if this isn't what they originally intended, it's retcon, basically. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. And the nice thing about this retcon is...
we know it's not what they intended.
It flows in perfectly. It works wonderfully.
That's not going to stop
There's two types of retcons.
Believing.
There's the type where it's just everything still works smoothly, and then there's the type that drive me crazy, where it's none of this is applicable anymore.
Which is that's the one that is technically a retcon, but yeah.
Yeah. Which I don't consider the first thing to actually be a retcon, which is why it annoys me when I see people talking about KH and they're like, it turns out there are more Keyblade wielders than you thought there were, and that's a retcon, and that's not a retcon.
No.
The only retcon I can think of in KH3 is when Donald and Goofy think that they haven't seen Yensid in 50 years or something like that, and it's just been 10.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the only thing that bothers me. But.
Last thing is, I've forgotten for both the first...
5 stars. You gotta say your rating.
Oh, 5 stars, yes. Both the first and second parts to talk about the stuff that's in the guide, so I'm going to read that now. A message of change. In many ways, Malachi's message was the end of an era. No, that is a different three-parter. Executive producer Dave Arnold and writer Paul McCusker were moving on to other endeavors and intended to use Malachi to hand off the show to the new team. That team included Al Jansen, who took over as executive producer, our favorite EP, as everyone knows.
Is he still working at Focus?
Not that I know of. I don't think I've ever heard his name on a credit past, past the Al Jansen years, as they are commonly referred to.
Are you being sarcastic right now?
No, they've literally in bonus features called them the Al Jansen years. He covers over...
When is this?
I don't remember which one specifically, but I can hear it in my head, which basically comprises mostly of all of the split episodes and then ends when Novacom starts.
Oh, what a sad run that would have been.
Yeah. Who took over...
He's like, this isn't going to get better, and then he left.
As executive producer, and Phil Lawler, who eventually stepped into the role of producer. The writing of Malachi's message contained another allusion to one of our favorite authors, C.S. Lewis. In several of his books, Lewis said that there were 3 possibilities for Christ. He was a horrible liar, a raving lunatic, or the Lord of all. Lewis used this argument to illustrate that you couldn't simply pass Jesus off as a great teacher. He had to be more than that. Witt uses the same argument for Malachi's being an angel. Technically, Malachi uses the same argument. Paul McCusker remembers, after I finished the first draft of the script, I sent it to my good friend Philip Glassborough, the casting director for Focus on the Family Radio Theater. He called me and stated, I've never said anything like this before, but I must play Malachi in this episode. I didn't want to argue with him, so Philip played Malachi.
He does a great job.
At the end of the episode, Witt got a sudden burst of inspiration. Paul and Dave hoped the transition to a new team would be a burst of inspiration for Odyssey. For Witt, It meant that he would create a new invention at wit's end. This invention, the transmuter, was introduced in Another Man's Shoes, album 33.
Yes! I told you! I told you it was the transmuter!
One more thing. Goof alert. At the beginning of Malachi's message, Eugene says he began college when he was 14. However, in both Eugene's Dilemma, album 5, and The Graduate, album 31, he says he was 13. Now, this is...
You know why I remember that? Because I was listening to the Blackgaard episodes. We were talking about Eugene's age.
This is incompatible with Eugene's Dilemma. However, you would think, boy, it sure would be weird that they would have an inconsistency between album 31 and album 32. That's because it's not. The guide is a little incorrect, as we've talked about before. In The Graduate, he does not say that he began college at 13. He says that he graduated at 13. And then in the next episode, he says that he began college at 14. This is not a goof alert. Eugene had a birthday over the summer.
This isn't a goof. This is how time works.
Yes. Yes, that is how it worked, based on my understanding.
Maybe it was a goof.
Time.
Time isn't supposed to move forward in Odyssey. Dude, they confirmed it was the transmuter. You were only telling me, like, in part 1 and part 2, like, we don't know for sure it was the transmuter. I feel so justified right now.
I still thought it was. I never thought it wasn't.
We don't know for sure 100%.
Yes, well, now it says in the guide, which is 100% reliable all the time.
It's so funny. I'm so happy that this is...
I feel like we've talked about it enough that we didn't need to bring it up in the part that it actually happened.
So funny. It's only used once.
Okay.
Thanks, Malachi.
So, 5 out of 5, Malachi's message. It's a great... But I love episodes where they kind of, like, do more, like, esoteric theological explorations. This one does a great job with talking about, like, the nature of angels. We get kind of our first look into wits, like, of men and of angels, and Malachi has a lot of great quotes about kind of the nature of, like, miraculous existence and stuff like that. Like, angels operate on the very edge of reality and stuff like that. And when he talks about, like, I'm your coincidences and your deja vu in the corner of your eye and all that stuff. All the stuff I said about the way that Malachi delivers the messages and the stuff about Connie and about, like, how God gives, like, is answering the questions that we ask. We have to think about what we're asking for in terms of what we're being given. It's all good stuff. Obviously, complaints about the whole Tom Margaret thing, but apart from that, that's literally the only thing in the episode for which I have any distaste. The rest of it is très magnifique.
Okay. You know what this means?
Time to talk about Blackgaard book. Okay, so, Victoria, what are we doing next time?
This is a Blackgaard book. Book 3. Book 3, Pawns Play. It's Pawns Play, isn't it?
Yeah, wait, no, Cross Check? Is that what it's called?
Cross Check, yeah, Cross Check. Pawns Play was the second one?
I don't know, I just call it Blackgaard book 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Phil, with all your fun chess terms that we don't care about.
Right now.
I believe, well, I don't remember which one Pawns Play is. Cross-check is definitely this one.
Is book 1, and the second
Well, I think
one
it did get a title on release.
It did get a title, but it's not in the PDF.
Not in the OAC preview version that we have.
Which I thought I'd bring up in the episode reviews. You said, please support them. We'll be buying the finalized versions once they come out. Yeah. And you never did.
I'm poor.
So get on that. Wait, I'm checking what the title of the first one is right now. It is Opening Moves.
Yes, and then Pawns Play, and then Cross Check. Okay.
And the fourth one's going to be called Rook's Ruse.
Yes. I don't think Cross Check is a thing you can do in chess, okay? It's been a little while since I played. I know there are some advanced moves like castling and stuff. I don't think cross-checking is a thing in chess. Unless it's like contact. Unless it's contact.
I'm not good at it.
Anyways, that's everything for now. Next time we'll be talking about the Blackgaard book. It's going to be a hoot and a holler. We have a lot to say.
I actually have like butterflies in my stomach. I've been waiting for this for 5 days. It is literally the only thing I've been thinking about 24/7.
I found a really good way finally to get Victoria to find a place in her schedule to record, which is have something she wants to record and have it after the next thing to record, so that you can't do it until you record this thing.
Can we talk about the book now?
So until next time, and we talk about that. Thank you for joining us on our side of YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Lonnie Mosner.
I'm so excited for the next episode.
And you've been watching the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.